Hi there, welcome to my channel. I'm Rhonda and I am going to show you two finished projects for women's tops, and I'm going to talk about how I improvised and a few tips on what to look for when finding a pattern that's going to work for you. So come and join me and let's talk women's garments. Hi there, welcome to my channel. So yes, I'm going to show you two finished projects today. They're complete, and you may have seen in my last video that I was partially done. I talked about the stitching and I gave you some information, but since they are completed, I have discovered a few things that I'd like to share with you and ways that I work around maybe some problems I'm having, some information that I should be looking for more specifically when I decide on a pattern to make, and so on and so forth. So I'm starting off with this sweater and it looks beautiful. I'm happy with the way it turned out, but it did take some improvising in order to get it to work. And I mentioned a little bit about it in my last video where I said it was working up small. Now, granted, I think I have tight stitching, which definitely doesn't help the problem, but I used a yarn that was compatible to the yarn listed, and I did my best to research it and found it. I also do my best with gauge. Sometimes I have some problems with it. You could test your gauge, and for some people it works, and for me, it's a weakness of mine, I'll be honest. And so I try my best to find ways of working around that. So first of all, I will tell you about this pattern. This sweater is called the Simple Textured Sweater, which is a free pattern offered by a website called forthefrills.com. Really pretty sweater that uses a yarn that I can't access here in Canada. It is Gloss DK yarn by We Crochet. I don't know if that's a UK yarn. I'm not sure where to get it, but I looked for a yarn that was compatible, that even the color was similar, and I ended up shopping at Hobbii, and I purchased this Mayflower Easy Care Classic. It's classified as a 3. It looked like the weight was similar. It's a merino wool. I thought it was really pretty. I like the feel of it. I was happy with it. I bought 14 little balls of this yarn. I thought it was going to be way more than enough. Turns out that I did have extra, but I'm glad that I purchased as much as I did because I might have gotten nervous if I didn't. I would rather have a little bit left over. I can make a little accessory. I like to have that type of insurance because you never know. So what I found with this yarn, even though it was considered a substitute, I think it, even regardless of my tight stitching, it was definitely a thinner 3-way yarn. And even though it's listed as a substitute, it was not really a 100% substitute. And so what I prefer more than gauge is measurements. And I like to look at what the measurements should be, how they should turn out for specific sizes. This pattern, unfortunately, didn't have that information, and I found myself looking for other patterns that had the information, but every sweater for the different sizes had different information. I guess it depends on the weight of the yarn, the style of the sweater. So I wasn't able to find information, and a lot of it was guesswork. And that's when the improvising is really necessary, and it starts to become guesswork and a lot of crossed fingers, hoping that it turns out okay. And I'm hoping the recipient of this sweater likes the fit. So I think it might have turned out a bit shorter than the pattern, so I'm hoping she's happy with that. And I've done this before where if the sweater isn't big enough, I will do these side panels, and I really don't mind it. I don't know if you can see it, but it starts going in another direction. And to me, it looks like the style. I have no problem with that. I also did a different neckline because the pattern called for a separate ribbed piece that had to be sewn on. Well, after sewing the sleeves here at the shoulders, sewing the shoulders together, sewing the sides, sewing the sleeves, I had enough sewing. I wasn't interested in creating a separate piece for the collar and sewing it. So I just did a simple half double crochet, front post, back post. And that's how I created this neckline. I hope you can see it. I probably should lower this. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. I'll remove the necklace here. I think it adds nice style, but you can see just a simple front back post. I didn't do double crochet because there is nothing close to double crochet in this project. The bottom is a ribbed edging. The sleeves are a ribbed edging, and it's a finer type of edging. So I tried to make it as similar, but I didn't think it had to be exact, and I really didn't want to sew it on, and I think it looks quite nice. And also with the sleeves, it was guesswork because there were some measurements, but not complete, that helped me out enough. That's just me. So I worked with the sleeve and I improvised. I did a little bit of my own stitching to make it wider. I found that this part was going to be narrow, so I made it wider. I widened it quicker than the pattern called for, and I think it worked out well. I think the sleeve is good. I think it's going to fit nicely, but like I said, I did have to improvise, and that's okay. I mean, it really is a skill builder, that's for sure. So it's not such a bad thing, but it is a bit of guesswork. So my suggestion is, when you're looking for a pattern, look for complete measurements for the sizes. Just know that it's always best to use the exact yarn if you can. If you can't, then that's when measurements definitely become important, and gauge as well. But with gauge might change throughout the project. I mean, we're starting here with the ribbed edging and then moving up to these other stitches, so that could change as well. And I found that even when I widened it, it still wasn't wide enough. In my last video, I talked about how I actually frogged some of it, went back down to the ribbing, increased it by about 4 inches, and I still found that for a small, medium sweater, it was going to be more like an extra small, and there was going to be no room. Now with a sweater, I would rather have it a little bit oversized than too small. So that's that. You could let me know what you think. You can tell me what your experience is. I would love in your comments below. Tell me if you've had this type of experience, how you work around it. I improvise. Is there something that you do? Do you have any tips? Let me know. As for this yarn, I loved it. I enjoyed working with it. I thought it was really nice to work with. There were a couple of places where it was joined. I didn't really like that, but overall, I would say for the number of balls that I used, it was pretty good. I would have preferred if it came in a larger size, so I didn't have to do as much joining. But that being said, the yarn was a substitute, so I used it. I find it comfortable. I don't find it overly itchy. If you are sensitive to wool, you might, because it is merino wool, 100%. So you may not like that, but it is easy care, which I really like, because the washing instructions are that you don't have to wash it by hand. I am definitely a proponent of gentle cycle or wash by hand to prolong the life of your garment. When you're working hard on something, you want it to last longer. But that being said, it is easy care, so you're not going to have to worry too much about ruining it if it does end up in the wash. So that is this sweater, and like I said, I hope that the recipient enjoys it. So the next thing I made was a poncho, so let's go to that and see how that turned out and how I may have improvised with that one. So this poncho, there was less need to improvise, which I really appreciated. I found it in this this book that I just purchased. This is a book put out by Lion Brand, which means that all the yarn in this book, in the patterns, is Lion Brand yarn, which for us in North America is probably yarn that, unless it's discontinued, is yarn that we'll be able to find. And even if it is discontinued, probably Lion Brand will put out a yarn that will be a proper substitute that will work really well. So this book is called Two Simple Shapes Equals 26 Crocheted Cardigans, Tops, and Sweaters. If you can crochet a square and rectangle, you can make these easy to wear designs by Selena Baca. I really like this book. I am not a fan of every single pattern, but enough of the patterns that definitely get my money's worth, and I enjoyed the detail in the pattern, in the instructions. So this one is called the Stearns. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Stearns Poncho. And what I liked about this is that it used yarn that I have in my stash. Not that color, but that's okay. It was the same yarn. I thought, great, I'm going to try this because, you know, after doing several patterns with substitute yarn and running into different problems, I was excited to try a yarn that was the same yarn. Now, I didn't have the color. The pattern in the book called for the color Sphinx. I didn't have that. I had a discontinued version of this Lion Brand Mandala Yarn. Same yarn, different color. This is called Sirens. I actually made a pretty nice score of this yarn at our local dollar store, Dollarama, and I got it for $4.50, and it's a nice sized cake. It's 590 yards of this 3-weight, very soft yarn. I enjoyed working with it very much, and I found that I did color control, but the need to color control was not huge. It wasn't a lot of laborious work. I did have to do it some of the time and not all of the time, because in some parts it transitioned gradually and it allowed me to just keep going. When there was a hard transition, and there were some, that's when I did the color control. But I didn't feel like I was overtaxed with it. It was pretty easy to do. And the fact that I had the same yarn, whether I'm a tight crocheter or not, it actually turned out well. Now, there were 2 sizes available, small and medium, large and extra large. I think there were some bigger sizes as well. Now, I don't consider myself small, and I consider myself maybe a larger medium, so I thought I'd go with the large and X large. Turns out I probably could have done the small medium, but that being said, it's a poncho, and ponchos can be oversized. This is really nice. It was a lot of work. Not because it was hard work, just because it's a 3-weight yarn and it's a large project. I mean, it's like making a blanket. It's basically one continuous rectangle, and then you do a little bit of work for the opening of the neck. And I also put snaps, which is an option that you can do. I like it because I don't want to be totally open, but I put on some sew-on snaps, which were easy to do. I don't know if you could see that. But it was really nice to do. That's all it is this giant rectangle with snaps. I've worn it already. I love it. I've got compliments on it. It looks great. I love wearing it with tall boots. I'm going to show you pictures of me wearing it. And great project. I know that it's a pattern that sells on Etsy. I've seen it. So if it's something that you like, you can either buy the book or find it in Etsy. And really nice yarn to work with. And the only improvisation I did was I changed the color, and then I did the color control. Nothing else was necessary. It turned out so manageable and just the way it was supposed to. I didn't have to do any changes. I didn't have to add anything to it. The edging turned out great. You know, you never know how each color is going to work up, but I'm really pleased with how the edging worked as well. So that's my second project. I hope you like them, and if you have any questions about these two, the First one is a free pattern. I'd be glad to answer any of your questions about any issues I had or any suggestions I have. This one is a pattern that's in a book, so it's not a free pattern. You could also buy it on Etsy. I will link you to the book if it's something you want to purchase. I recommend it. It's got some nice patterns. I'll give you a quick glance at some of them. Really pretty. I like the one on the front cover. I think that's really nice. I have a few favorites. And if you're into scarves, vests, there's some really nice ones as well. I really like this one here. I'm definitely going to try and make that one. Really, really pretty tops. There's an interesting one as well. There are very many, and I like a lot of them. So I definitely recommend the book. I'm always looking for things like that. You know, you can get free patterns to a certain extent, and I'm all about getting free patterns, and of course purchasing patterns on Etsy or Ravelry as well. But if you're looking for a nice pattern book with some good variety, I would definitely recommend this book. So that's it for now. I've got some other projects coming up. I've got one that I'm going to show you soon as well, with yarn that I purchased at a dollar store, which is yarn that I've never used before. Was really curious about it. Loved what I came up with. So watch for my next video, and I'm going to show you what I made. And who knows, I might take you shopping with me and talk about that as well. Take care. Have a great day. Have a great evening, and happy crocheting. Bye for now.